Snow shrieks across Boston, a sound like tearing metal. On a frozen street corner, a retired German Shepherd Cane named Coda stops dead. He plants himself, and he barks. He sees what his grieving owner cannot. A 7-year-old boy, his face bleached white by the cold, clutches his dying baby sister. In his other hand, a soggy cardboard box of hand-drawn cards, a desperate plea for a single dollar. One man in a penthouse is lost in his past. One boy on the street is fighting for a future, and the dog is the only creature who knows they belong together. When Coda barks, the night will shift from tragedy to destiny, from a storm to a miracle. What happens next will make you believe in quiet miracles and second chances for the forgotten. Before we begin, tell me where you are watching from. Drop your country in the comments below. If you believe no child or animal should ever face fear alone, hit subscribe now and share this story with someone who needs hope. Boston was drowning in white. The nor'easter didn't just arrive, it invaded, a shrieking horizontal assault of ice and wind that scoured the brick facades of Back Bay and turned the streets into frozen, impassable canals. From 48 floors above the chaos, Elias Vance watched the city dissolve. His penthouse was a fortress of glass and pressurized silence, paid for by an empire of code and digital security, but it offered no defense against the image glowing on his tablet, a 5-year-old's crayon drawing of a lopsided, 6-legged dog. His thumb ghosted over the screen, a reflex trying to touch a life 3 years gone. At 41, Elias was a man built of controlled, angular lines, a strong jaw, eyes the color of oxidized steel, and a stillness that unnerved his board members. He had built a life of unassailable logic, yet it had all been rendered meaningless by one random, illogical afternoon of twisted metal on the Mass Pike that had stolen his wife, Elena, and their son, Julian. A low whine cut the silence. Coda, his retired German Shepherd, rose with the deliberate gravity of a veteran. The dog was a 90-pound shadow of sable fur and intelligent amber eyes, a former search and rescue cane who had been Elias's only constant in the silent after. Coda pressed his cold, wet nose firmly into Elias's idle hand. It was not a request. It was a tactile command. You are here. I am here. Elias let out a sharp breath. I know, boy. A short one, he conceded, his voice rough. He pulled on a heavy parka, the technical fabric whispering as he clipped the leash to Coda's collar, and they descended in the silent, brushed steel elevator, leaving the sterile quiet for the maelstrom below. The storm was not a backdrop. It was an antagonist. Sergeant Anya Sharma was already fighting it. Her Ford Explorer cruiser crawled through the narrow, treacherous streets of Beacon Hill, its wipers thudding uselessly against the accumulating ice. The cobblestones were a buried trap, and the vehicle's heater was losing the battle. Anya, in her mid-30s, had the sharp, weary eyes of someone who had seen too much of the city's desperation. Her dark hair was pulled back in a functional, severe bun, a few stray wisps plastered to her temples. She was navigating the corner of Charles and Cambridge when her headlights illuminated a brief, pointless spat, 2 well-dressed drunks arguing over a cab. Anya hit the siren, a short, impatient whoop. Get in the cab or get off the street, she projected, her voice flat. They stumbled in, and the cab slid away. Anya sighed, logging the minor disturbance. It was the small, preventable miseries that wore her down. She was about to continue her route when a new call cut through the static. All units, District A, 911 hang-up from a payphone, vicinity of Charles Street. Dispatcher reported hearing a child crying before the line went dead. Weather is compromising callback. Nearest unit advise. Anya's frustration vanished, replaced by a sudden, cold dread. A child. In this. Unit 4B, I'm on Charles. I'll take it, she snapped, her professionalism kicking in. She killed her headlights for a moment, letting her eyes adjust, then switched on her roof-mounted searchlight. She eased the cruiser to the curb and stepped out, the wind instantly stealing her breath and stinging her face with ice. Boston PD, anyone out here? Her voice was ripped away. She moved down the sidewalk, her boots sinking, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the swirling white. She checked every alcove, every doorway. Then she saw it. Not a person, but a small, sodden cardboard box, half buried in a drift against the brick wall of a closed bakery, and next to it, a huddle of rags. Police! Are you okay? She called. The rags moved, A boy, impossibly small, materialized from the snow. He couldn't have been more than 7, his thin coat meant for a mild autumn, his dark hair frozen in icy spikes. His face was a raw, chapped red, and his eyes, God, his eyes, were wide and ancient, staring at her with pure terror. He was clutching an even smaller bundle, wrapped in a tattered gray blanket. "We didn't do nothing," he chattered, the words barely audible. "I know," Anya said softly, her heart seizing. She knelt, her knee sinking into the deep snow, keeping her flashlight beam low. "I'm Officer Sharma. I'm here to help." The bundle in his arms coughed, a dry, rattling sound that was too small and too wet, a sound of lungs full of fluid. The boy's composure broke. "It's my sister, Lily. She's real sick." Beside them, the box, filled with icy slush, displayed its tragic message in smeared crayon. Handmade cards. $1, please. A block away, Coda stopped. It wasn't a pause. It was a full, rigid stop. His front legs braced, his massive head snapping up to taste the air. Elias tugged impatiently. "Coda, come on. It's too cold." The dog ignored him. He whined, a high-pitched, anxious sound. He smelled it, a scent that cut through the ozone of the storm and the salt from the plows. The sharp, metallic tang of high fever. The acrid spike of adrenaline-fueled fear. His SAR training, dormant for years, took over. He lunged, the leash snapping taut with 90 pounds of focused muscle, yanking an unprepared Elias off his feet. "Heel!" Elias commanded, stumbling on the ice. But Coda was relentless, dragging him around the corner, his focus absolute. Elias, cursing, finally regained his balance and saw what the dog saw. Through the swirling curtain of snow, the flashing blue lights of the cruiser, a kneeling officer in a dark uniform, and the 2 small desperate shapes huddled in the doorway. Coda let out a single, sharp bark. Not a plea, but an announcement, found. Coda's bark was not a sound of aggression. It was an instrument of precision. It sliced through the wind's shriek, a sharp, definitive report that meant target acquired. Sergeant Anya Sharma, adrenaline surging, spun on her heel, her right hand instinctively dropping to the grip of her holstered service weapon. Her tactical flashlight beam cut the darkness, illuminating the threat. A tall man, his face obscured by the hood of an expensive-looking black parka, and a large German shepherd that was pulling hard on its leash, its posture locked and focused. "Sir, back away! Control your dog," she commanded, her voice the flat, non-negotiable tone of authority that worked on drunks and gang members alike. Elias Vance froze, his hand tightening on the leash. He wasn't seeing a police officer. He was seeing an apparition. The swirling snow, the pulsing blue and red lights of the cruiser, the kneeling officer, the tiny shivering boy, and the pathetic sodden box of hand-drawn cards. It was a tableau of raw desperation, a scene so far removed from his curated world of data and silent penthouses that his mind struggled to process it. The image struck a chord of memory so deep and cold it momentarily paralyzed him. Helplessness. He recognized the shape of it. "He's fine," Elias managed to say, his voice emerging rusty from disuse. He's a rescue dog." He pulled Coda back, but the dog resisted, planting his feet and letting out a low, urgent whine, his gaze fixed not on Anya, but on the small bundle in her arms. Coda could smell the infection, the high-octane scent of a body losing its fight against a rapidly escalating fever. The standoff, lasting only a fraction of a second, was shattered by the sound from the blanket. Lily coughed. It was a sound that didn't belong in the world, a horrifying liquid rattle, as if her small lungs were trying to expel water. It was the sound of drowning. Anya's training took over. The man and his dog were no longer a threat. They were a distraction. "This child is in respiratory distress," she snapped, turning her attention back to Caleb. "I need an ambulance." She keyed the radio on her shoulder. 4B to dispatch, I need a pediatric bus. Priority 1. But Elias stepped forward, his boots crunching in the snow. "The storm," he said, the word clipped. "An ambulance will be 20 minutes. Mass General is 6 blocks from here. You'll be faster." Anya paused, calculating. He was right. The streets were a disaster. A rig would get bogged down. She could be at the ER entrance in 2 minutes. She made the decision. "Kid, you're with me. We're going to the hospital," she said to Caleb, her voice softening just enough. She moved to scoop up Lily, her heavy gloves brushing the child's cheek. The baby was terrifyingly light, yet radiating an intense dry heat that pierced the cold. Caleb, who had been staring at Coda with a strange lack of fear, suddenly scrambled to grab his soggy cardboard box. "No, my cards!" "Leave it, son. We have to go now," Anya ordered, already pulling open the rear door of the Explorer. "It's for my mom," Caleb cried, his voice breaking. "She needs the money." That tiny act of desperate feudal loyalty, clutching ruined paper in a hurricane, struck Elias with the force of a physical blow. It was the drawing on his tablet. It was the six-legged dog. It was the last pure thing his own son had made. Anya didn't have time to argue. She grabbed Caleb by the arm and half lifted him into the back seat, pushing the box in with him, and slammed the door. She sprinted to the driver's side, radioing her change of plans. "Dispatch, 4B is transporting. Taking them to MGH myself. Notify the ER." The cruiser's engine roared, its tires spinning for purchase before finding grip. The blue and red lights flashed, illuminating the swirling snow for a moment, and then the vehicle was gone, swallowed by the whiteout. Elias and Coda were left alone on the corner. The silence that rushed in was absolute, broken only by the shriek of the wind. The world returned to its gray, empty state. His duty was done. Coda's duty was done. He could go home. He could retreat to the 48th floor, pour a three-finger measure of whiskey, and let the sterile quiet erase the scene. It was not his problem. It was a tragedy, yes, but it was the city's tragedy, not his. He turned to go, but Coda did not turn. The dog stood rigid, staring into the blizzard where the cruiser had vanished, and let out another low, frustrated whine. The rescue was incomplete. His target was still in distress. "It's over, boy," Elias said, tugging the leash. "Let's go home." Coda pulled against him, digging his paws into the snow, refusing to yield. He was trained to stay with the victim until they were secured, and to him, this was not secure. Elias looked down at the snow. There, half buried, was a single dropped card that had fallen from the box. A small waterlogged piece of cardstock with a crayon drawing of a yellow sun, its rays struggling against the wet smear of the snow. He stared at it, that cold, logical fortress he had built around himself. The one that had kept him safe and numb for 3 years suddenly felt thin. The image of the boy's face, the sound of the baby's breathing, the pathetic hope of $1 for a drawing. It was all a chaotic, messy, human complication. It was everything he had vowed to avoid, but Coda was pulling. The dog's instinct was pure, follow, and deep within Elias, beneath the layers of scar tissue and calculated indifference, an echo of that same instinct stirred. It wasn't logic. It wasn't charity. It was a raw, undeniable pull, a bridge of snow and fate. "All right," Elias said, his voice quiet but resolute, startling himself with the decision. "We follow." He did not go back for a car. He was 6 blocks away. He pulled his hood tighter, lowered his head against the wind, and began to walk, matching Coda's determined pace. The journey to the hospital was a brutal pilgrimage. The wind tore at him, stinging his exposed skin with ice, but he barely registered the cold. His mind was focused, for the first time in years, on something other than the past. He was moving toward the crisis, not retreating from it. He was walking into the one place he had sworn he would never enter again voluntarily, the sterile, fluorescent-lit world of an emergency room, the very place where his own life had ended. He saw the lights of the MGH ambulance bay, a beacon of harsh white and red in the storm. He saw Anya's cruiser parked haphazardly, its doors still open. He walked past the sliding glass doors, Coda pacing confidently beside him. Through the glass, he saw the chaos inside. Anya handing Lily over to a triage nurse, who immediately barked for a pediatric crash cart. He saw Caleb, small and terrified, clutching his box, being led away by another nurse. Elias stopped. This was the line. He could remain an anonymous witness. He could turn and walk away, and no one would ever know he was there. He had satisfied the dog's whim. But as he stood there, the automatic doors sliding open and bathing him in warm, antiseptic-scented air, he looked down at Coda. The dog was looking up at him, panting slightly, his amber eyes clear and certain. "Well?" they seemed to ask. "This is the place." Elias Vance took a breath, stepped out of the storm, and walked into the light. The sliding doors of the Massachusetts General Hospital emergency room hissed shut, sealing Elias Vance inside a world he had spent 3 years and a considerable fortune avoiding. The sudden shift from the wind's chaotic howl to the pressurized, sterile hum of the ER was a violent sensory assault. The air was too warm, too bright, and carried an odor he viscerally remembered, a sharp chemical sting of antiseptic layered over the faint, coppery tang of old blood. It was the smell of controlled panic. For a horrifying, disorienting second, he wasn't in the pediatric bay. He was 2 floors up, outside the surgical ICU, waiting for a doctor to emerge with a face carved from pity. He felt his lungs tighten. His instinct, primal and overwhelming, was to turn, to push back through those doors into the clean, numbing cold of the storm. Coda, sensing the spike in his owner's adrenaline, pressed his body firmly against Elias's leg, a solid, living anchor. The dog's ears were erect, his tail low but not tucked, taking in the scene with the alert neutrality of a trained professional. He was on post. That simple grounding pressure was all that kept Elias from retreating. Ahead of him, the scene unfolded with terrifying speed. Pediatric respiratory distress, probable hypothermia. Anya Sharma's voice cut through the din, all street cop weariness replaced by focused urgency. A team converged on her before she had taken 5 steps. A triage nurse, a woman with a stern face and efficient hands, took the small, limp bundle that was Lily. "What have we got, Sergeant?" "Found her outside, unresponsive. Acknowledged me on scene but lost consciousness in the vehicle." "Sats are dropping! She's cyanotic," another voice yelled. "Get her to Trauma Bay 3, now!" A man stepped through the curtain, and the chaos instantly organized around him. He was perhaps 50, with thinning gray hair, deep lines of exhaustion etched around his eyes, and a pale green scrub top that looked like it had been worn for 48 hours straight. This was Dr. Ben Carter, the attending physician, a man who moved with the weary precision of someone who had fought this exact war 1,000 times and lost just enough of them to respect the enemy. "Breathing is shallow, rattle in the upper quadrant," the nurse reported. "Fever is 104.8, 105.1. She's seizing." Dr. Carter didn't look at Anya or the flurry of activity. He looked only at the child. "Forget the vitals, get me a pediatric airway tray. She's drowning. We may need to intubate. Move!" The gurney was already moving, a rolling nexus of medical equipment and focused bodies. Caleb, who had been pushed aside, suddenly lunged forward. "Lily!" he screamed, his voice cracking. He grabbed the metal rail of the gurney, his small, raw fingers clinging to it. "That's my sister. Don't take her." A second nurse, a large heavy-set man named Brenda, tried to gently peel his hands away. "You need to wait here, honey. Let the doctors work." "No! I have to stay with her. She's scared," Caleb yelled, his small body rigid with a feral protective instinct. He was still clutching the soggy cardboard box of cards to his chest with one arm, the other locked on the gurney. He was an anchor of 7-year-old defiance in a sea of medical urgency. Dr. Carter paused, looked at the boy, and then at the nurse. "Brenda, get him, or I will. I have 30 seconds. Brenda's grip became firmer. "Kid, you're not helping." He pulled Caleb back, breaking his grip. The gurney shot through the double doors, and they swung shut, leaving Caleb alone in the sterile hallway. He stared at the doors, his face a mask of white shock, his breathing coming in ragged, silent sobs. He didn't cry. He vibrated. Elias watched it all, frozen. He saw the gurney, the crash cart, the swinging doors. But he was seeing a different team, a different gurney 3 years ago. He saw his own son, Julian, small and pale on a gurney just like that, his favorite stuffed bear tucked beside him. He remembered the feel of his own hand being pulled away. The memory was so vivid it buckled his knees. He saw himself in Caleb. He saw the same impossible, futile defiance, the same shattered incomprehension. It was the same moment, just with a different child. Anya Sharma, her duty done, ran a hand over her face, leaving a wet streak. She was about to go to Caleb when the nurse, Brenda, turned to her with a clipboard and a pen. "All right, Sergeant, I need a name for the girl. Insurance, Medicaid number, anything?" Anya shook her head. "No name, just Lily. The boy is Caleb. That's all I have. Found them homeless on the street. They're Jane and John Doe for now." Brenda's face tightened. He was no longer a gentle nurse. He was an administrator. "Sergeant, you know the drill. We stabilized her, but we need information. Without a guardian, I have to call DCF. They'll be here in 20, and this boy becomes a ward of the state by morning." "I'm trying, Brenda. Give me a minute." Anya snapped, her frustration with the system, the cold, the entire night boiling over. I'm running a search on missing persons now, but it doesn't matter, a quiet voice said. Both Anya and Brenda turned. Elias Vance had stepped forward, Coda silent at his heel. His face was pale, his steel-colored eyes locked on the swinging doors. What doesn't matter? Brenda asked, his pen hovering. The insurance, the cost, Elias said. I'll cover it, all of it, whatever she needs. Brenda stared at him. He took in the expensive parka, the man's controlled demeanor, the imposing, disciplined dog. This was not the usual ER clientele. And you are? Elias's gaze shifted. He looked at Anya, then at Caleb, who was still staring at the doors, lost. This was the moment, the precipice. He could drop a black card on the counter and walk away, a simple act of anonymous, wealthy charity. But he looked at Caleb's back, the small shoulders shaking, and he heard the doors of the ICU sliding shut on his own life. No, not again. He wouldn't just be a witness. He wouldn't just pay. He would stand in the gap. He met Brenda's gaze. I'm their guardian. The silence in the hallway was sudden and absolute. Even the background beep seemed to fade. Anya's gaze snapped to his. It was a sharp, calculating look, the one she used to size up a suspect's lie. She knew. In that instant, she knew he was fabricating it. She had seen him for the first time on the street corner 10 minutes ago, but she also saw the desperation of the situation. She saw the bureaucratic machine starting to grind, a machine that would chew up Caleb and spit him out. She saw this strange, wealthy man and his dog, who had appeared from the storm like an apparition. She held his gaze, 1,000 questions in her eyes, and she said nothing. Brenda, however, was satisfied. Misery had a simple, transactional solution. Very well, Mr. Vance, Elias Vance. Mr. Vance, if you'll come with me to admissions, we can get the paperwork started. Go, Anya said to Elias, her voice low. I'll stay with the boy. Elias nodded, a silent contract passing between them. He handed Coda's leash to Anya. He'll stay with you. Anya, surprised, took the leash. Elias followed the administrator down the hall. Anya turned to Caleb. The boy hadn't moved. She knelt. Caleb, your sister is getting help. You're safe now. Caleb didn't respond. He was in shock. Coda, now on Anya's leash, nudged her hand, then stepped forward, his claws click-clacking gently on the linoleum. He walked past Anya and sat down, deliberately, a foot away from Caleb's leg, his back to the boy, facing the doors. A guardian's posture. He let out a low, soft sigh. Caleb flinched, finally breaking his stare. He looked down at the massive dog who had appeared at his side. He saw the calm, amber eyes. He saw the steady rise and fall of the dog's chest. He looked at his own soggy box of cards, then back at the dog. Slowly, his hands still shaking, Caleb reached out, his raw, chapped fingers tentatively touching the thick, warm fur on Coda's shoulder. The dog didn't move, accepting the touch as his due. In the fluorescent glare of the hallway, a 7-year-old boy, a veteran police officer, and a retired rescue dog waited. The administrative desk was an island of beige laminate in the sea of sterile white. Brenda, the nurse administrator, navigated the bitted software with a rapid, impersonal efficiency. He was no longer the man who had gently tried to coax Caleb. He was a gatekeeper, his large frame hunched over the keyboard. Vance, Elias, he muttered, typing, and the relationship to the children? Elias stood opposite him, his parka dripping melted snow onto the linoleum, Coda's leash clutched in his hand. He had just walked through the fire of his past, and now he was facing the ice of bureaucracy. They are family, Elias said, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. A distant cousin's children. The mother is unwell. I am the designated temporary guardian. He was surprised at the speed of his own fabrication, the way the details simply appeared, plausible and firm. Brenda grunted, not looking up. We'll need paperwork for that. DCF will require it. You will have it, Elias said, his voice flat. He slid a wallet from his jacket, extracted a single piece of black, anodized titanium, and placed it on the counter. The Amex Centurion card sat there, a stark, absolute statement. For now, Elias continued, you will bill this card for all services related to Lily and Caleb, and you will ensure she has a private pediatric room as soon as she is stable. Brenda finally stopped typing. He looked at the card, then up at Elias's cold, steady gaze. He had seen wealth, but this was power. This was the kind of power that built wings of hospitals, not just paid bills. His demeanor shifted, subtly, from gatekeeper to facilitator. Of course, Mr. Vance. I'll note you as the guarantor and emergency contact. He ran the card. While you're here, I need you to sign the initial consent for treatment. He spun the tablet around. Elias stared at the digital line. Consent for treatment, Lily Doe, Vance. He took the stylus. His hand, which had been steady through the storm, suddenly felt light. He remembered signing another form, 3 years ago, a surgical consent that had been a futile prayer. He pressed the stylus to the glass. The signature, Elias Vance, glowed green. He had done it. He had crossed a line, tying his name, his credit, his lie to this unknown child. He felt for the first time in 3 years, not numb, but terrifyingly, sickeningly alive. He walked back to the hallway, the temporary receipt folded in his hand. Anya was still kneeling by Caleb, but the scene had changed. The boy's shaking had subsided. He was no longer staring at the trauma bay doors. His left hand was buried deep in the thick ruff of Coda's neck, his knuckles white. The dog sat perfectly still, a solid, breathing wall of warmth, absorbing the boy's silent terror. Caleb's other hand was still clutching the soggy box, but his gaze was fixed on the dog's calm amber eye. He was grounding himself. "Elias," Anya said, standing up as he approached. Her voice was low. "He's in shock. He won't talk. He just keeps saying the blue door." Elias looked at the boy, then at the cop. He saw her exhaustion, the frustration of a puzzle with missing pieces. "I've handled the admissions. They are treating Lily as my ward," he said. He didn't offer any more detail. He didn't need to. "Good," Anya said, the word clipped. "That buys them time. Now I need to find the mother. The blue door is all I have." She looked back at Caleb. "Caleb," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "I need to find your mom. She's sick, right? I need to help her, too. Where is the blue door?" Caleb finally looked up, his old haunted eyes meeting hers. "By the bridge," he whispered. "The one with the noise." Anya nodded. The Zakim Bridge. The noise would be the constant roar of the 93. It was an industrial area, lined with old warehouses and forgotten tenements. "All right, I'm going to find her." She looked at Elias. The unspoken question hung in the air. What about him? Elias understood. He took Coda's leash from her hand. "I'll stay," he said. "He's attached to the dog. I'll wait here with him. You go." Anya gave a sharp nod. A silent, strange partnership had been forged between the cop and the liar, built on the shared urgency of saving this fractured family. "Don't let him out of your sight," she said. "I won't," Elias replied. Anya turned and walked quickly out of the ER, back into the storm, her radio already in her hand. Elias sat down on the hard plastic chair, the linoleum cold beneath his boots. Coda immediately settled at his feet, his body pressed against Caleb's legs, creating a small triangle of warmth. "My name is Elias," he said quietly, to the top of the boy's head. Caleb didn't answer, but his fingers tightened in Coda's fur. It took Anya 40 minutes. 40 minutes of driving through near-zero visibility, her cruiser sliding on the unplowed streets beneath the bridge. She found it. A 3-story tenement building, condemned decades ago, its windows boarded up. But one door, at the end of a debris-strewn alley, was painted a bright, peeling, defiant blue. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness of the entryway. The air was colder inside than out. It smelled of mildew, frozen garbage, and despair. "Boston PD! Anyone in here?" Her voice echoed in the emptiness. She found their home. On the second floor, in a room where the wind whistled through a broken window, was a nest. A pile of filthy blankets, a single gas station candle, and a stack of empty instant noodle cups. In the corner, a small collection of crayons. This was it. But there was no one there. The nest was cold. Chills ran down Anya's spine. Had the boy been alone for days? Then she saw it. On a small, overturned crate that served as a table, weighed down by a rock, was a piece of paper. It wasn't a suicide note. It was worse. It was a discharge form from Boston Medical Center, dated yesterday. The name, Aurora Hayes. Diagnosis, pneumonia, severe malnutrition. She had been in the hospital. She had been discharged. Sick. into a blizzard, with two small children. Anya felt a surge of pure cold rage. Tucked inside the folded form was another note, this one on a scrap of paper, the handwriting shaky. Caleb, I'm sorry. I can't. The fever, I'm going back. To the clinic on Albany. Wait for me. Don't let them see you. She hadn't abandoned them. She had gone for help, likely delirious, and told her son to hide. Anya ran back to her cruiser, the snow and paper clutched in her hand. She got on the radio, calling dispatch, requesting a check-in at the Albany Street Clinic. -4B, clinic's been closed for 6 hours. Storm. Anya slammed her hand on the steering wheel. Dispatch, run a search. Jane Doe, admitted in the last 6 hours, collapse, hypothermia, South End, check BMC and Tufts. The radio was silent for a full minute, then crackled back to life. We have a match. Jane Doe, female, approx 30, collapse with fever. Admitted to Boston Medical Center 3 hours ago. She's in the overflow ward. She was back in the same hospital, but as a Jane Doe, she was lost in the system, unidentified, while her children were 6 blocks away. Anya didn't go back to MGH. She called Elias's cell, a number he had given her at the desk. Vance, I found her. She's at BMC, admitted as a Jane Doe. I'm heading there now. I'm coming, Elias said, without hesitation. He found Brenda. The boy needs a warm room, now. The nurse, seeing the look on Elias's face, simply nodded and led Caleb and Coda to a private consultation room. Elias met Anya at the BMC entrance. They walked together, two unlikely allies, through the quieter, grimier hallways of the city hospital. They found the room. Jane Doe. Anya pushed the door open. The woman in the bed was a sketch, a watercolor left in the rain. She was terrifyingly thin, her skin a translucent gray, her dark reddish-brown hair matted to her forehead. An IV dripped saline into her arm. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow. This was Aurora. This was the mother who had been selling her son's drawings for $1. Elias stared, his face an unreadable mask. He saw the end result of helplessness. He saw a woman who had fought until she had nothing left. Anya stepped toward the bed. Ma'am, can you hear me? My name is Sergeant Sharma. At the sound of her voice, the woman's eyelids fluttered. They opened, revealing eyes of a pale, haunted green, hazy with fever and confusion. She saw the police uniform and panic flickered in her gaze. She saw the tall, imposing stranger behind her. Her chapped lips parted. Her voice was a bare thread of sound. Caleb? Lily? The question hung in the overheated, sterile air. A thread of sound so faint it was nearly lost in the rhythmic beep of the vital signs monitor. Caleb? Lily? Aurora's pale green eyes, clouded with fever and medication, darted between the police uniform and the tall, imposing stranger at the foot of her bed. Her entire being was focused into that single, desperate query. Sergeant Anya Sharma moved to the bedside, her movement slow, deliberately non-threatening. She unclipped the radio from her shoulder, placing it on the stand to show she was not here for an arrest. Aurora, she said, her voice dropping the hard edge of the street, becoming something softer. My name is Sergeant Sharma. Your children are safe. Aurora's eyes widened, and her chapped lips parted. A primal animalistic panic began to surface. She tried to push herself up on one elbow, a movement that sent a wave of dizziness through her and triggered a harsh, rattling cough. Where are they? She gasped, her voice raw. Did you take them? DCF. No, please. They're all I have. No, Anya said firmly, placing a hand gently on Aurora's shoulder to keep her from rising. Listen to me. No one took them. They are safe. They are warm. They are at Mass General Hospital, just a few blocks away. Your daughter Lily is very sick. She is getting help. Aurora stared at her, the words failing to compute. Her fevered mind could only process fragmented images. The blue door, the blinding snow, the overwhelming exhaustion, and now a cop telling her that her children were somewhere else. Mass General? She whispered, confused. But I have no money. How? It was then that Elias Vance stepped forward from the shadows of the doorway, his expensive parka rustling quietly. The movement drew Aurora's terrified gaze. He stopped a respectful distance from the bed, but his presence seemed to fill the small, dim room. He was a man clearly from a different world, his face angular and controlled, his steel-colored eyes assessing her with an intensity that was not unkind, but deeply serious. "My name is Elias Vance," he said, his voice quiet but carrying a natural authority. "Sergeant Sharma is telling the truth. I found your children in the storm. Lily, she was in severe distress. I brought them to MGH. Aurora's gaze flickered between the two of them, her mind desperately trying to assemble the pieces. "You found them?" "He did," Anya affirmed. "He stayed with them, Aurora. He got them help." "The hospital wouldn't treat her," Aurora whispered, the bitter memory of 1,000 rejections informing her despair. "They wouldn't take her without—" "I told them I was her guardian," Elias stated, cutting through her protest with a simple, unbelievable fact. "I am paying for everything. She is in the pediatric intensive care unit. She is stable and she is receiving the best care in the city. No one is taking them from you. I gave my word." Aurora stared at him. The statement was so clean, so absolute, it was like a foreign language. People like him didn't find people like her. People like him didn't pay. "Why?" she asked, the word a bare breath, suspicion and confusion warring with a desperate, terrifying bloom of hope. "Why would you do that? Who are you?" Elias held her gaze. He could have given a simple, charitable answer. It was the right thing to do. But looking at this woman, this skeletal sketch of a mother who had clearly fought until she physically collapsed, he knew she deserved more than a platitude. He thought of Julian's drawing on his tablet. He thought of Caleb's defiant, terrified eyes. "I know what it looks like to be helpless," he said, his voice dropping. I couldn't walk away. Not again." The raw, unadorned honesty of his admission hung in the air, resonating with a truth that transcended their different worlds. Aurora's body, which had been rigid with panic, seemed to deflate, the fight finally leaving her. The tension that had kept her conscious snapped, and tears began to well, spilling silently from the corners of her eyes and tracking through the grime on her temples. The door swished open, and a nurse entered. She was a woman in her 40s with kind, dark eyes and a no-nonsense bun, her name tag reading Rodriguez. She looked at the Jane Doe who was now crying, and then at the cop and the tall, well-dressed man at her bedside. "Well," Nurse Rodriguez said, raising an eyebrow. "Looks like you're not Jane Doe anymore. You have visitors." She moved to check the IV drip. "Do we have a name, ma'am?" "It's Aurora Hayes," Anya provided. "She's the mother of the 2 children brought into MGH tonight." "Right," the nurse said, typing into the tablet she carried. "And you, sir?" "He's with me," Anya said, stepping in before Elias had to extend his lie. "He's our civilian support. A good Samaritan." Nurse Rodriguez nodded, clearly having seen stranger things on a storm night. "Well, Ms. Hayes, your vitals are a mess. You're severely dehydrated, malnourished, and this pneumonia is no joke. The doctor wants to keep you on IV antibiotics for at least 48 hours. You need to rest." "My children," Aurora whispered, her panic starting to rise again. "I have to see them." "You're in no condition to go anywhere," the nurse said flatly. "And MGH is a different hospital, honey. We can't." "Wait," Elias interrupted. He pulled his phone from his pocket. "What is the number for the pediatric floor at MGH?" Anya rattled off the direct line she had gotten from the desk. Elias dialed, his thumb moving over the sleek glass. He put the call on speaker. It rang twice. "MGH Pediatrics, Brenda speaking." "Brenda, this is Elias Vance," Elias said, his voice commanding. "I'm the guardian for Lily and Caleb. I am here with Sergeant Sharma and their mother, Aurora Hayes. I need to speak to Caleb." There was a pause. Brenda, the administrator, was clearly still on shift. "Mr. Vance?" "Yes, sir." "The boy is in a private waiting room. He's with your dog. He's sleeping." "Wake him up," Elias ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Put him on the phone." There was another pause, a muffled sound, and then a small, sleepy, terrified voice. "Hello?" "Caleb?" Aurora cried out, pushing herself up again, her eyes locked on the phone. "Caleb, baby, is that you?" "Mom?" The boy's voice cracked, suddenly wide awake. "Mom, where are you? Are you okay? The police lady, "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay," Aurora sobbed, clutching the bed rail. "Is Lily?" "Lily's sleeping," Caleb said, his voice growing stronger. "The doctor said she's sick, but they're helping her. And I'm with Coda, the big dog. He's right here, Mom. He's warm. I know, baby, I know. You be brave. You be so brave for me, she whispered. I'm going to see you soon. I promise. Okay, Mom, he said, and for the first time there was a tiny note of relief in his voice. I love you. I love you too, Caleb. So much. Elias ended the call. The room was silent, save for Aurora's quiet sobs of profound, bone-deep relief. She sagged back against the pillows, her hands still reaching for the phone. Nurse Rodriguez was watching the scene, her professional mask softened by an undisguised sympathy. She silently checked the IV bag and left the room, pulling the door almost shut. Elias looked at Aurora, her eyes closed, tears still streaming. He looked at Anya, who was visibly letting out a breath she'd been holding for hours. The immediate crisis was over. The family was located, accounted for, and safe. But as Elias looked at the woman in the bed, a woman who had been discharged with pneumonia into a blizzard, he knew this wasn't over. It wasn't just about paying a bill. He thought of the condemned tenement, the cold floor, the crayons in the corner. He had signed his name as a guardian. He had stepped into the gap. He wouldn't let them fall back into it. He looked at Anya, a new, unshakable resolve settling in his chest. She can't go back there, he stated. It wasn't a question. No, Anya agreed, her voice grim. She can't. Come morning, DCF will be all over this. They'll put Caleb in temporary foster care and... No, Elias said again, his voice like iron. They won't. I'm her guardian, remember? And I'm his guardian. He met Anya's gaze, the lie now solidifying into a plan. When they are discharged, both of them, they will have a place to go. They're coming with me. Anya Sharma stared at Elias Vance, the statement hanging in the air between them, thick and impossible. They're coming with me. Her cop's mind, trained to see risk, procedure, and liability, reeled. Vance, you can't be serious, she said, her voice a low, sharp hiss. That's not helping. I don't even know what that is. You're not a relative. You're a stranger. You've lied to one hospital. Now you're planning to... What? Kidnap them from another? From the bed, a weak, terrified voice cut through. Wait. Aurora Hayes was pushing herself up on one elbow, her pale green eyes wide with a new, frantic energy. The brief relief of hearing her son's voice was gone, replaced by a chilling fear. This man, this rich, powerful stranger, wasn't just paying a bill. He was making a claim. What do you mean, coming with you? She gasped, looking at Anya for protection. Where? Please, Sergeant. You can't. They're my children. Elias turned his full attention to her. He moved closer to the bed, ignoring Anya's warning glance. He did not look at Aurora with pity. He looked at her with the same intense analytical focus he gave a critical piece of code. Aurora, he said, his voice calm. You cannot go back to that tenement. You know this. Sergeant Sharma knows this. When you are discharged, where will you go? The shelter? The shelters are full. The storm flooded 2 of them. I checked, he stated flatly. And even if you found a bed, DCF will not let you take a 1-year-old recovering from severe pneumonia to a cot in a gymnasium. He's right, Aurora, Anya said gently, hating that he was. The moment you're medically cleared, DCF, children and families, will step in. They will place Lily in medical foster care and Caleb in a separate group home. It could be months before you get them back, even if you find a job and housing. Aurora's face crumpled. This was the nightmare she had been running from, the one that had kept her going. No, she whispered, shaking her head, the tears returning. No, they can't. I am offering the only other variable, Elias continued, his logic absolute. I have a guest house on my property. It's separate from my main house. It's warm, it's secure, it has 3 bedrooms, you can recover there, your children can be with you, together. Aurora stared at him, her fever-bright eyes searching his face for a hint of... what? Deceit? Malice? She found nothing, only an unshakable, terrifying resolve. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Elias paused. He thought of the 6-legged dog, of the cold penthouse, of the unshakable stillness of Coda. Because I have the resources to fix this, he said, and I have found I can no longer live with myself if I don't. Anya let out a long, slow breath. This was it. The line. She was a sworn officer, and this was irregular, dangerous, and probably illegal. But she saw the alternative. A broken family fed into the grinding, indifferent gears of the state. She made her choice. Vance, she said, turning to him, if you do this, you're not a good Samaritan anymore. You're a party to this. I'll have to note that the mother verbally consented to your temporary guardianship. She looked at Aurora. Right, Ms. Hayes. You are entrusting Mr. Vance with the care of your children while you recover? Aurora looked from the cop to the stranger. It was a choice between two terrors, the system she knew would fail her, or the man she didn't know at all. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, I consent. Elias merely nodded, as if this were the only logical outcome. He stepped into the hallway, pulling his phone out. He didn't celebrate. He executed. His thumb flew across the screen. David, he said, his voice clipped. I need two things. First, cancel my entire schedule for the next week. Second, I need you to get a team to Mass General, now. He listened. It's a DCF matter, a potential removal. I am claiming temporary guardianship of two minors. No, I'm not related. David, I don't pay you to ask if it's possible. I pay you to make it possible. The mother has consented. A BPD sergeant is my witness. Stop whatever you are doing and build a legal fortress around these children. Now. He hung up. He looked at Anya. Lawyers are on their way to MGH. I'm going back. I need you to arrange a private medical transport for Aurora from here to my property as soon as she is stable for travel. Bill it to my account. Anya just stared at him, realizing the scale of the man she was dealing with. I'll see what I can do. Elias and Coda returned to MGH, the wind still howling, but the snow now easing to a wet sleet. He found the private room Brenda had given them. Caleb was asleep in the chair, his head pillowed on Coda's flank, his small hand still clutching the handle of his soggy, ruined box. Coda thumped his tail once in greeting, but didn't move, understanding his duty. Elias was about to sit when the door opened, admitting a woman he instantly recognized as a threat. She was in her late 50s, wearing a practical tweed coat over a beige turtleneck, her graying hair pulled back. Her face was etched with the profound, systemic weariness of her job. She carried a heavy, worn leather briefcase. Mr. Vance, she said, her voice polite but firm, I'm Janice Gable, from the Department of Children and Families. Elias felt his back stiffen. This was the machine. Ms. Gable, I've just come from the pediatric floor, she continued, her eyes taking in the room, the sleeping boy, the massive dog. Lily Hayes is stable, but very ill. I'm here to take custody of her and her brother Caleb. She said it as if she were ordering coffee. That won't be necessary, Elias said, his voice dangerously quiet. I am their designated guardian. Ms. Gable sighed, a sound of practiced patience. Mr. Vance, I've seen your signature on the forms. I also see no court order, no power of attorney, no familial relation. You are a good Samaritan who, according to this file, claimed guardianship. That's not how this works. The mother is incapacitated. The children are, by definition, wards of the state until she is deemed fit. That is the law. The mother, Elias countered, has designated me as their temporary guardian, verbally. A verbal designation in a different hospital while she is medicated to a man she just met. That will not hold up, sir. I'm taking the boy. She stepped toward Caleb. Coda let out a low, soft growl, a vibration that came from deep in his chest. Ms. Gable froze. Call off your dog, Mr. Vance. He's not a threat, Elias said calmly. He's a protector. The door opened again. Am I interrupting? Sergeant Anya Sharma stood in the doorway, her BPD jacket still wet with sleet, her face set with authority. Ms. Gable, I assume? Gable turned, surprised. Sergeant, yes. I'm here for the Hayes children. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Anya said, stepping into the room. I was the responding officer who found the children. I was also present at BMC not 30 minutes ago when the mother, Aurora Hayes, was assessed. She is lucid, and she specifically and verbally designated Mr. Vance as the sole temporary guardian for both Caleb and Lily while she is medically incapacitated. I have filed a report to that effect. It was a masterful, stunning lie. Ms. Gable was caught. A police sergeant's official filed report versus what? Her own skepticism? A cop's testimony would hold up in court, at least long enough to drown her in paperwork. A verbal designation, witnessed by an officer, Gable repeated, processing this new enormous complication. It's still highly irregular. We are in the middle of a state of emergency, Elias said, pressing the advantage his lawyer and Anya had created. My legal team is already coordinating with your department's counsel to formalize the paperwork. Furthermore, we are transferring both children and the mother to a single private medical facility where they can recover together. It's all arranged. He had reframed his guest house as a facility. Gable was completely outmaneuvered. The storm, the cop, the lawyers, the money. She looked at the sleeping boy, his hand buried in the dog's fur. This would not be an easy snatch. This is unorthodox, she said, her authority deflating. I will require a full welfare check at this facility within 24 hours of placement. I'll be in touch, Mr. Vance. Sergeant. She turned, defeated, and left the room. The transfer was executed with the speed and precision of a military operation. A private ambulance, staffed by a nurse Elias had hired, collected Aurora from BMC. At MGH, a black Immaculate Escalade pulled up to a side exit. Elias gently woke Caleb. Caleb, it's time to go. We're going to see your mom. The boy was groggy, confused, but he clutched his box and followed Coda, who walked beside him as if they had been partners for years. They drove through the quiet, snow-covered streets of Brookline, a wealthy suburb where the storm was just a beautiful inconvenience. The SUV turned into a long, heated driveway, past a large, modern glass house, and stopped in front of a separate, beautiful stone guest house. It was glowing with light. The private ambulance was already there. As Elias opened Caleb's door, the boy saw his mother, Aurora, wrapped in blankets, being helped out of the ambulance by the nurse and Sergeant Sharma. Caleb's feet hit the shoveled stone path. He looked at the warm lit house. He looked at his mother, who was weak but there. He looked at Elias. He was safe. He was terrified. He was, for the first time in his memory, home. The guest house was an illusion of warmth. It glowed with soft, recessed lighting, the air smelling of lemon polish and new carpet. But to Caleb, it was as alien and terrifying as the surface of the moon. He stood just inside the doorway, his small frame rigid, still clutching the damp, disintegrating box of cards to his chest. This place was silent, not the chaotic, howling silence of the storm, but a thick, expensive, listening silence. A woman in pale blue scrubs, her face kind but professional, was helping his mother onto a sofa. That's it, Ms. Hayes. Easy does it. This was Nurse Patel, the private nurse Elias had hired, a woman with efficient hands and calm, dark eyes who had ridden in the ambulance with Aurora. Aurora, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, looked impossibly small against the plush cushions, her face a pale, waxy gray. She looked like a ghost haunting a show home. Caleb, she whispered, her voice a dry rasp, come here. He didn't move. His gaze was fixed on the man by the door. Elias Vance stood on the threshold, Coda a silent shadow at his side. The man's presence filled the room. He was no longer a participant. He was the proprietor, the owner of the silence. The refrigerator is stocked, Elias said, his voice flat, as if addressing a new tenant. Nurse Patel has all the necessary medication for Ms. Hayes. Lily is in the bassinet in the main bedroom. She is stable and sleeping. My phone number is on the counter. You are safe here. He did not step further into the room. He was a man of logistics, and the logistics were complete. This part, the human part, was a terrain he no longer navigated. Caleb, Aurora tried again, her voice stronger. It's okay. Come. Caleb took one hesitant step, his wet sneaker squeaking on the hardwood floor. Coda, sensing the boy's fear, whined softly and nudged his hand. The contact broke the spell. Caleb moved, not to his mother, but to the farthest, darkest corner of the room, sitting on the floor with his back to the wall, pulling his knees to his chest. He put the box of cards in his lap, his hand never leaving Coda's fur. He was a small, feral creature brought into a gilded cage. Elias watched this, his angular face unreadable. He looked at the nurse. She will be here for 12 hours, then return in the morning. If you need anything before that, call me. He nodded at Aurora, a stiff, formal gesture, and then he and Coda were gone, the heavy door clicking shut with a sound of expensive finality. The night was the longest of Caleb's life. He refused to sleep in the soft, cartoon-themed bed in the second bedroom. He eventually fell asleep on the rug at the foot of his mother's sofa, his hand on Coda's flank, after Nurse Patel had finally left. Aurora drifted in and out of a restless, medicated sleep, her dreams filled with falling snow and blue doors. When morning came, the world was silent, the storm over, the guest house buried in a pristine, glittering blanket of white. Elias arrived, not himself, but by proxy. A silent delivery man left boxes on the porch, new clothes, in sizes that were startlingly accurate, diapers, formula, and a high-end baby monitor for Lily. And for Caleb, 2 large, expensive-looking Lego sets and a professional art kit, sketch pads, charcoal, and colored pencils. Elias, it seemed, solved problems with transactions. Caleb ignored the Lego. He picked up the art kit, his fingers tracing the outline of the pencils. At 10 o'clock a.m. sharp, the doorbell chimed. Aurora, who was sitting up drinking hot tea, felt her heart seize. Caleb scrambled behind the sofa. Coda, who Elias had left with them, stood up and let out a low, warning rumble. Elias entered, not in his parka, but in a dark gray wool sweater and jeans. He looked like a different person, less a force of nature, more a weary, awkward man. And behind him, her practical tweed coat buttoned high, was Ms. Janice Gable from DCF. "Miss Hayes, Mr. Vance," Gable said, her eyes sweeping the room, taking in the scene. She was professional, sharp, and deeply skeptical. "As discussed, I am here for the 24-hour welfare check." She was here to find the cracks. She walked through the guest house, her clipboard in hand. She noted the stocked fridge, the new clothing, the pharmacy-grade medical supplies by Aurora's bed. She peered into the bedroom where Lily slept peacefully in the bassinet, her breathing quiet and even. The facility was immaculate. It was better than any foster home she had ever placed a child in. This made her more suspicious, not less. "All right," Gable said, sitting in a chair opposite Aurora. "Ms. Hayes, my name is Janice Gable. I am the state-appointed social worker for your case. I need to ask you some questions." Aurora's hands trembled. Are you comfortable here?" Gable asked, her pen poised. Aurora looked at Elias, who stood silently by the fireplace, an unreadable statue. "Yes," Aurora whispered, "it's warm." "And you are here of your own free will? You have not been coerced or promised anything in exchange for this arrangement?" The implication was vile, and it hung in the air. Aurora felt a flash of anger, the first real emotion beset fear. "I am here," she said, her voice shaking but finding a new strength, "because Mr. Vance saved my children's lives. I am here because my daughter is breathing. I am with my children. That is all that matters." Gable's eyes narrowed. The answer was emotional, not a legal yes or no. She turned her attention. "Caleb?" The boy peeked out from behind the sofa. "Can you come here, please?" Caleb looked at his mother, who nodded. He crept out, Coda moving with him, a single, attached unit. "Caleb," Gable said, her voice softening slightly, "my job is to make sure you're safe. Do you feel safe here?" Caleb looked at the strange woman. He looked at his mother, pale on the couch. He looked at the fireplace, where a low fire was crackling. He looked at the window, where he could see the deep, beautiful, terrifying snow. Then he looked down at Coda, his hand buried in the dog's thick fur. He remembered the ice, the wind, the sound of Lily's breathing in the dark. He looked back at Ms. Gable. "It's warm," he said, "and Coda is here." It was the only truth he had. Ms. Gable stared at him, then at the dog. She was checkmated. The house was perfect. The mother was present. The children were fed, warm, and clearly bonded with the guardian's dog. She had no legal grounds to remove them. "Very well," she said, her voice tight with professional frustration. She stood, her duty fulfilled, but her suspicions unresolved. "Mr. Vance, I will be filing a report that the children are, for now, in a stable environment. But I will be back, regularly, And Ms. Hayes, I will be in touch to establish a family reunification plan. Good day. The door closed. The immediate threat was gone. For 3 days, a strange, silent routine formed. Elias would appear in the morning, bringing groceries, his presence brief and awkward. He'd ask Nurse Patel for a medical update, nod at Aurora, and then spend a few minutes outside, throwing a ball for Coda. He never stayed. He never sat. Aurora, her strength slowly returning, would watch him from the window. He was a phantom, a benefactor who seemed as haunted as she was. Caleb, however, had found his voice. He sat at the small kitchen table with his new art supplies, drawing. He drew the storm, a swirl of black and blue crayon. He drew the blue door. He drew Lily, a small red shape in a white crib. And he drew Coda, over and over, a large sable protector with kind yellow eyes. On the 4th day, Elias came to the porch and found a drawing waiting for him. It was a picture of him and Coda standing in the snow under the blue and red flashing lights. He picked it up, his hand unsteady. Later that evening, he found Aurora sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset paint the snow-covered hills pink. "He's talented," Elias said, his voice startling her. He was holding the drawing. He uses it to talk," Aurora said, her voice still rough. "He draws what he can't say." Elias was silent for a long time, staring at the drawing. He saw the terror in the chaotic lines, but he also saw the detail, the exact color of Coda's collar, the flashing lights. He remembered another drawing. "My son, Julian," he said, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. He hadn't said it aloud to a stranger in 3 years. Aurora turned, her eyes wide, sensing the sudden, profound shift in the air. This was the first piece of him he had ever offered. "My wife, Elena, and my son. They died 3 years ago, in a car accident." He said it flatly, like a weather report. "Julian," he continued, his voice cracking just once, "he used to draw. He drew a dog, before we got Coda. He drew it with 6 legs. He said it needed extra legs so it could run fast enough to catch him." The confession hung in the cold, clear air. Aurora saw it. The why. It wasn't charity, it wasn't logic. It was this: a man trying to outrun a ghost who had found a boy drawing pictures of his own. "Elias," she said, her voice soft, I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say," he said, his face a mask of old pain. He looked out at the hills, at the sprawling, empty estate that his success had bought him. I buried them. Up on the hill, over there," he pointed. "When you're stronger," he said, more to himself than to her. "When you're both stronger, I think I need to take you there." The confession hung in the cold, clear air, a fragile, impossible bridge between them. I think I need to take you there." Elias Vance, a man who built fortresses of logic and code, had just handed Aurora Hayes the blueprint to his own broken center. He had pointed to the graves of his wife and son, and in doing so had irrevocably tied their fate to his. Aurora watched him, the silence stretching. She saw the mask of the billionaire, the cold benefactor, shatter, leaving only a man defined by a single catastrophic loss. She finally understood. This wasn't charity. This wasn't pity. This was a man trying to fill a chasm, and he had just invited her to stand at the edge of it with him. He had exposed himself, and the resulting vulnerability was almost physical. He flinched, pulling his gaze from the hill and stuffing his hands deep into his pockets. He cleared his throat, a harsh, grating sound. "Nurse Patel will be back in the morning. The number is on the counter." And just like that, the wall was back. He turned, Coda rising in a single fluid motion, and walked back to the main house, his boots crunching on the pristine snow, leaving Aurora alone on the porch, trembling not from the cold, but from the weight of the soul he had just shown her. The next 2 weeks were a slow, hesitant thaw, both meteorological and emotional. The mountains of snow receded from the guest house, revealing the first stubborn green shoots of crocus. Aurora's strength returned in small, vital increments. The translucent gray of her skin was replaced by a pale, human color. Her cough vanished. She was no longer a ghost. She was a woman, thin and worn, but present. Lily, thriving on consistent warmth, proper nutrition, and antibiotics, transformed. Her rattling cough was gone, replaced by the gurgles and occasional sharp, joyous shrieks of a healthy 1-year-old. The routine settled. Elias, however, remained a problem to be solved. He was awkward, a man of profound action who was terrified of simple interaction. He still brought groceries, but now he would linger, his excuses paper-thin. He'd check the baby monitor's connection. He'd inspect the fireplace flue. He'd stand stiffly in the kitchen, Coda at his feet, while Aurora made coffee, accepting a mug with a curt nod and drinking it while staring out the window. Caleb remained the quiet center of their strange new universe. He was still largely silent, but his fear had receded. He no longer hid. He had claimed the guest house as his territory. And he drew. He filled sketchpad after sketchpad. He drew Coda sleeping. He drew Lily in her crib. He drew the snow. The blue door and the storm began to appear less frequently. He drew what he saw, not just what he remembered. This fragile piece was shattered on a Thursday morning by the arrival of a gleaming black Audi. A man in a suit so sharp it looked like it could cut glass stepped out. This was David Chen, Elias's chief counsel. He was in his mid-40s, with a face of polished angles, a flawless, bespoke suit, and an air of restless, high-strung energy. He was the architect of Elias's legal fortress, and he was here because the fortress was under siege from the outside world. He met Elias on the stone path, his voice a low, urgent hum. "Elias, this is unsustainable. You can't just delegate a $100 billion merger. The Zurich board is threatening to walk. You haven't been in the office in 3 weeks." Aurora watched from the window, her hand tight on her coffee mug. "It's handled, David," Elias said, his voice clipped, annoyance radiating from him. "Is it?" David shot back, gesturing to the guest house. "Or are you running a private, unaccredited orphanage? Your guardianship petition is a legal fantasy. It's tying up my entire team. We are exposed, Elias. These people are a liability." "They are not a liability, David," Elias said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, cold level. "They are under my protection. The deal is secondary." "Secondary?" David looked at him, aghast. "Elias, that deal is you. It's your life's work." "No," Elias said, looking past David toward the guest house window. "It's not." He turned and walked away, leaving his lawyer sputtering by the car. Aurora stepped back, shaking. She had known he was rich. She had not understood the scale of it or the sacrifice. He was burning down his old life, and she and her children were the kindling. Later that day, she found Elias staring at the hills, the tension from his argument with David still coiled in his shoulders. "You should go back," she said softly. He turned, surprised. "He's right. Your work, your life. You can't just stop." "I can," he said. "It's just code. It's not real. My children are real," she said, "and I will be grateful to you until the day I die. But I can't be the reason you lose everything." He looked at her, and the anger at David softened. "I already lost everything, Aurora. I've just been waiting for the paperwork to catch up. This," he gestured to the guest house, to the sound of Lily babbling inside, "is the first real thing I've done in 3 years." The day came 2 weeks after his confession, on a Tuesday morning that felt more like spring than winter. The air was cool, the sun bright, the ground damp but firm. "Are you strong enough?" he asked Aurora at the door. She nodded, pulling her new warm coat tighter. She was. They walked. It wasn't a somber procession. It was just a walk. Elias pushed Lily in a high-tech all-terrain stroller. Aurora walked beside him, her steps steady. And Caleb, clutching his new sketchbook, walked just ahead, his hand resting, as it always did, on Coda's back. The dog trotted happily, the guardian of this strange, quiet flock. The hill was steep, but the path was clear. They reached the crest. It wasn't a mausoleum, it was simpler and more beautiful. Under a massive ancient oak tree, 2 simple slabs of gray granite sat flush with the earth. Elena Vance, Julian Vance, that was all. Elias stood there, his hands in his pockets, his back to them, staring at the stones. He had brought them here, and now he had no words. "It's beautiful, Elias," Aurora said quietly, stepping to his side. He flinched at her proximity but didn't move away. "He loved this spot," Elias whispered, his voice thick. He was talking about Julian. We flew a kite here, a blue one. It got stuck in that tree. He cried. Not because he lost the kite, but because he said the tree looked sad, being tied up. He ran a hand over his face. He was a good boy. He was sharing a memory, not just a fact. It was a second, more profound opening. Aurora didn't offer platitudes. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She just stood with him, sharing the silence. Coda sat at Elias's feet, leaning against his leg. Then, Caleb moved. He had been silent, watching. He walked past his mother, past Elias. He stopped at the smaller of the two stones. Julian. He knelt in the damp grass. He opened his sketchbook, his small fingers deft. He tore out a single page. He didn't look at Elias. He just carefully placed the drawing on the granite stone, weighting it down with a small, smooth pebble. Elias stared. He expected a drawing of Coda, or the house. His breath caught. The drawing wasn't for him. It was for Julian. It was a picture, in bright, bold crayon, of a smiling boy with messy brown hair. The boy was running, his arms outstretched, and running joyfully beside him, leaping in the air, was a lopsided, lovable dog. It had 6 legs. He heard you," Aurora whispered, her hand covering her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. From the porch, that night, he heard the story. Elias crouched, his movements stiff, his knees cracking. He was now eye level with Caleb. He looked from the drawing to the boy. Caleb was watching him, his old solemn eyes no longer filled with fear, but with a quiet, profound understanding. He had heard Elias's pain, and his artist's heart had responded. He had given Julian his dog back. Elias didn't say thank you. The words were too small. He just reached out and put his hand on Caleb's small shoulder. The boy didn't flinch. "It's perfect, Caleb," Elias said, his voice breaking. "It's him." He looked up, over the head of this quiet, remarkable boy, and met Aurora's tear-filled gaze. The wall of oxidized steel that had encased his heart didn't just crack, it shattered. In a fateful blizzard, a man who had lost everything found everything. A boy fighting for his family found a father, and a mother in despair found a home. The story of Elias, Caleb, and Coda isn't just about chance. It's a reminder that God has a plan, even in our darkest moments. Sometimes, the miracle isn't that the storm stops. The miracle is that someone is sent by God, willing to walk through the storm for you. Coda's bark wasn't just a sound. It was the call of destiny, a whisper from God saying, "These broken pieces fit together." In our daily lives, we all face our own storms, and we all meet a Caleb, someone quietly fighting, hoping just one person will stop. You don't have to be a billionaire to be an Elias. Sometimes, the miracle God wants you to perform is simply one brave act, to stop, to listen, and to open your heart. One small gesture of care can be the beginning of someone else's most beautiful chapter. If this story touched your heart, please share it as a message of hope. Comment below about a miracle you've witnessed in your own life, or someone who became a miracle for you. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so we never miss a story that reminds us of the power of kindness and faith. May God bless you and your family, keeping you safe and warm through every storm. We'll see you in the next story.